Hey everybody, subject of this video. There was a study, there was a gentleman who mentioned the study, and he said you are at a 3,000% or 3,000 time more fold uh, susceptible, you are more susceptible to being injured when you experience this sensation. And it was fatigue was the research study. You know where I stand on research and science, and until they study the actual person, you, it's not going to apply as directly as people will make it sound. And all science and research around healing or injury or illness, disease or human is all in a way to try to find what's wrong with your body and frame it in that way to prevent anybody, the individuality from it. It's to bodies are wrong and this is the solution. And that's my biggest problem with it. So if we just changed it, it would be different. But anyway, the gentleman that said this was Dr. James Andrews, and he's an orthopedic surgeon. He's very popular in the Tommy John surgery realm, and this was when it came up. And so, of course, when he says this, he's the godfather of all, and everybody listens, and it's his clinic in Birmingham and his facility, which I actually went and visited. And if anything comes out of there, it's just straight, no question, no anything. Here it is. So with that, the solution to this, the conclusion was pitchers who throw fatigued are more susceptible to having an injured ligament. And so how do we stop fatigue? That's what he says. So how do we stop fatigue? That's what his thing was. So then all the minds got around it, and they went into what? Just don't throw anymore, right? Load management. Reduce the number of times a person throws, as if that wouldn't work. If I don't drive a car, I promise I'm not going to get an injury. I'm not going to get in an accident. And that doesn't make any sense, right? There's more to it than that. And then they went into specific, real intricate physical therapy and rehab modules and they just overthought everything. And then they went into the mechanics of things. And then they just overthought everything and nothing improved, to where now we're still spinning our tires and have no idea. Baseball's completely changed around trying to protect the individual instead of going into and looking at and creating a way that the individual can look at themselves. Put themselves in a position to be able to adapt to the throw rather than looking at the throw affecting the individual. That doesn't make any sense. And this was proven by my dad. Just spoke at a symposium where he was asked to speak, and he was just listening to how they were presenting and all this stuff. And it's all the fellows and surgeons and interns and everybody and the latest and greatest with what's going on with Tommy John surgery, blah, blah, blah. And his quote when he stood up and said, he's just like, if I had to know any of this stuff to come back and pitch in the big leagues, I never would have done it. And it's true. He made a good point in his dry sense of humor. We complicate everything in illness and disease. One, starting even what it is, or even injury. We complicate it so much so that the solution would only lie in the latest and greatest continuing education, or the license, or the verbiage, or the equipment, or the latest technology. And it's just never going to be that. The solutions will always be very simple, because healing is never complicated. And so he makes a great point though. Fatigue is real. Fatigue is something that we all experience. If we didn't experience it, we would never evolve or adapt. The body is equipped to experience that, take it on as an input, and then infinitely change everything so that it doesn't get there again. And if we play by the rules and we give it inputs to put it in a position, utilizing the power of fatigue, we can put ourselves into, we can evolve and heal to a state that we've never even comprehended before. I'm not just talking training, because that was the first 7 years of my career of 23 years of doing this. And it was just get everybody as strong as possible, really get them to get themselves in a position to be as strong as possible. And that will solve a lot of your freaking problems. I'm telling you right now, when you just stay within the essence and the true nature of what movement and training are, not classes, not fitness, not gyms, not programs, but what they are to a human, just like they were as a human, a little human, trying to train and prepare and move to be a bigger human. those elements that we were exposed to then, self-driven, self-guided, to teach ourselves to walk and pick up things and carry and smile and laugh and use silverware and coordinate activities moving forward. That's a lot of things are going to start to be solved. And how I mean is, the stronger you are, the more of a capacity you have to where the little stuff doesn't cost as much energy. And when you aren't spending so much energy on the little things, all these other things take on a different color. They take on a different shade. You have a different lens in front of your camera. And so that is where to start for all healing approaches. So regardless of what your label is, I don't care. It doesn't have to just be injuries. It's anything. It was even with the skin in my hands burning off and me having to look at my life. It wasn't the simple change your business and close down your office. It was bigger than that. But for me to be able to go into that environment and sit there and stare at how my body was responding, and then look at how my life was, and then look at what I was needing to change, and then look at all that I was needing to change upon that change, so that that change could have space, and then what that change freed up, and then what I was going to change over here, and came down to just being strong as shit. And that's a really good place to be, to start. And there shouldn't be a prescription or a plan that has you healing that doesn't start with the human essential to training and movement. And again, as I've said, not in classes, not in facilities, not in groups, but as we were as infants. But I experienced this. I shared this big time over on the subscription page with my hike yesterday. So my hike was ill-timed. I specifically chose to do that, which it wasn't this long duration hike. It wasn't something that was really crazy, but it was going to be intense. And 40 to 50% of it was bouldering, and it was at night, and my headlamp died, and all this stuff. But I got to a physical point where I was so fatigued that normal steps, balance, writing my eyesight, my line of my horizon, everything became such a friggin' drain that if I didn't hard focus on some of the basics, I'd misstep. And I did it twice and did both ankles to a level that they're not bad, but again, they could have been bad. Slipped, fell off a rock face, into sand, fell into cactus multiple times. So experienced this massive level of fatigue and inactivity. Fatigue and training is a whole nother animal. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about fatigue and activity, to where I was blown away, because I'm like, there are people that live their lives like this. This took a 4-hour hike at different elevations, fatigues from days of things that I was doing, things I'm processing now, and changes that I'm making in my life, coming back off the funeral, coming back off these healing responses, healing in other areas. I had no business going into the desert to do this hike, but I did it as a challenge on purpose, because the worst case, again, I'd sleep in the desert or have an injury of some kind that I know I could heal, because that's just what the body does. So another thing, when you start to play by the rules, you kind of are fearless. When you take on adventurous tasks or ways of living that are fun and bottomless, but limitless, ceilingless, wallless. But the amount of focus and energy that we have to spend on the simplicity of our life, that doesn't leave much room for the big stuff. And that's kind of what the takeaway is here. He makes a great point. Fatigue is that's a big deal. Yeah. But if we could sit there and create a scenario where we use it as like a spoonful of medicine, if we use it to our advantage, then you get yourself to evolve and heal to a state that it takes so much to fatigue you that you're almost impenetrable to the little stuff. And then think about, if you're not spending energy on the little stuff, how much is left for the big stuff to sit there and see with clarity of, wow, I need to do this, or I need to add more of this, or I need to be more here, or I need to put myself more here, I need to cut this out, or I need to, the space of that. Anything, any change you're going to make in your life is going to cost energy. Yes, even the good stuff, even the pleasant stuff, there still is a trade-off. You might not notice it, but it is still an exchange. So fatigue, where does it sit in your life? And what is the basic start to put yourself in a position to become very hard to fatigue? And that's going to be in the human essential of movement and training. And when I say human movement and training that is for every single person who is looking to heal, not just injuries, not just bones and orthopedic. That is any label. For you to make the changes necessary, for you to have the strength to cut things up, for you to have the strength to sit there and burn all your ships, for you to actually reach out and want guidance, for you to listen to the guidance, you are going to have to be very, very truly able within your skin. And that comes from the Human Essential to Human movement and training. It's so much more important than food and light, yet we love to talk about food and light. They're very important too, but you cut out, it'd be like, movement and training are optional. That'd be like telling a plant, yeah, your light is optional. Sunlight to a plant is movement to a human, not sunlight to a human. Movement comes first in the form that it did when we were children. Again, not in gyms, not in classes, not in groups. I can't say that enough. And again, the difference between being active and having an active life versus training and preparing in the essential movement and training to prepare for the active life. Two totally separate worlds. So again, that's where we're going to start. That's going to get us to have the tissue that has the biggest energy output possible, and that's going to be muscle. We get ourselves to this level, and then are there things on a day-to-day that can affect our ability to fatigue us at any given time? Of course there are. We're going to have to go in and look at those. But to be very, very hard to fatigue allows more space for you to focus on the big stuff, and then for you to add stuff, and then for you to experience more. And it was one of those that I shared over with last night's hike. It was something that I haven't done in a really long time, was get to this level of fatigue on purpose and then put myself into a position to have to live and have to make these calculated decisions on this basic experience and activity. And the capacity for me to make these minor little adjustments wasn't there. So my hard focus had to go so much that I was more exhausted getting back to the rig and coming home last night, because it was a day hike, more exhausted from having to spend so much on the simple than it was on just the physical task of what I did. Because if you look at what I did, it's physically not impressive. That wasn't the test. It was bigger than that. So fatigue, where does this sit in injuries? Where does this sit in your life? Are you using it as a power? Are you using it as a superpower? If not, why not? Boom.